Hi Jeff, I'm really looking forward to this portfolio review, and your first picture here really struck me. Love this car, and I love this entire scene. It's really classic. So let's see what we can do to make it even more amazing. The first thing I feel is that we need to straighten just a little bit, so I'm going to rotate counterclockwise, just a touch. Okay, let's accept that. And let me just show you the before here and the after. It's not much, but it's these little things that really add up. Okay, another thing is that we really don't need this line here. Now, there's two ways to do it. The quick and easy way is to simply crop out. Okay, now if you feel that you wanted to not lose that real estate, all you'd have to do is go to your favorite clone stamp tool, and Lightroom does an okay job at this. However, there are better solutions out there. Okay, so now that looks pretty decent. We cloned out the line because it really wasn't that necessary. Okay, so the next thing I see is that we have what's called a blue tone or a blue color cast to this entire picture. And this is normal because it is in the evening. And we know it's in the evening because we can see the lights on the diner signs and so on. Now there's nothing better than the blue-yellow combination. So I'm not going to suggest that we turn the whole picture more yellow. And that would be the inclination of most people. I'm actually going to suggest that we do something really different by sort of adding warmth up here and maybe even adding more blue down here. So there's a number of ways to do that. In Adobe Lightroom CC, there's something called linear gradient. Excuse me. And a linear gradient is a very interesting way to do a very fast change to one section, usually the top or the bottom of your picture. So what happens, I'll start from the beginning here. As you can see, I put my cursor at the very top, and then I'm going to click and drag. And what happens is I get these three horizontal lines. Now I'm going to stop them right about at the top of the car. And I can angle it actually along the lines of the diner as well, which is really great. Now I'm going to let go. Now I'm able to adjust any of these parameters. Like I could adjust exposure. Do you see that? I could adjust, let me reset exposure. I could adjust saturation. No saturation, a lot. However, here, what I'm wanting to do is increase the sort of the orangeness of the signs, because I like how the warmth of those old signs come out in the evening. So I'm going to increase the temperature, and I'm also going to play around the tint just a little bit, see which one I like better. Maybe a little bit of tint to the positive. Okay, now I can go back here. And do you see how whenever we go over this blue dot, we see a red, it's called a mask. It just shows you where the action is going to take place. I can actually increase this, make it even bigger, so that the affected area is just above the car. Okay, so we've warmed up the top part. Now let's cool down the bottom part. So we're going to go to... We're still within our linear gradient. We're going to create a new one. So let's go to the bottom, and let's move up just maybe to the base of the car. Now the first thing you're going to see is, well, why is the pavement turning yellow? Well, that's because we still had the same parameters as before. So we're going to reset what we did before. This time we're going to go to the opposite. Under temperature, we are going to go to the blue side. Now, did you see what happened there? It was normally this, and now we have added blue. Now let's take a look at this picture before and after. Here's the before shot. and here's the after. The interesting thing is these are just very small, subtle changes, but in the end, it's the small changes that really add up to a big picture. Blue and yellow always work well together. They're just fabulous. So try to get the blue and yellow combination in as much as you can. Okay, so let's go to your next picture. Excuse me. Sorry. Okay, next picture. Okay, love the shot. I don't know where this is. Beechworth. Looks nice. Looks like a great place. Now, here's an interesting thing is architecturally, a lot of people like a true architectural shot. I don't think it's needed for this picture, but I just want to show you if you are so inclined to get straight vertical lines. So under geometry, and a lot of other software has this as well, we would just go to vertical. And what happens is the software is looking at every single vertical line and it's straightening it for you. Now, at this point, what we would do is constrain crop, and this simply crops for you, and it allows you to get rid of those white spaces automatically. So let's look at the original. Okay, now let's look at the straightened vertical. What do you prefer? Now, the interesting thing is you can still adjust certain parameters. So let's go to vertical. If you feel that what the computer did or the software did was way too much, like too perfect, why not just back it off a little bit? You don't have to go to the original. But now take a look at this. So I'm at +10 for my vertical, and I feel that that's a little bit more natural looking than the absolute vertical perfection that the software did. Because our human eye, you know, we're used to seeing the buildings falling backwards when we photograph them. That's just the way it is for photographs. Cameras don't have the extra ability that the human eye and brain has to perceive architectural objects when we're looking up. Okay, so I feel that this is good. One thing I will say is that there's a little bit too much space on the left. So let's crop in. Now, one thing you may say, well, I'm losing all this beautiful, cobblestone. Well, let's bring it down, because I agree, it's very good cobblestone. Excuse me. So what we have going on here is the vertical line. I don't know if you can see it very well, but we have the vertical left third line now going through the lamppost. So let's accept that crop. And at this point, what we have is a classical composition that obeys the rule of thirds pretty well. Let's look at the original. Okay, now let's look at this corrected image. The architectural lines are pretty vertically straight. Of course, I adjusted it just a touch to make it look a bit more realistic. The lamppost is on the vertical third on the left, and we have a wonderful sort of leading curve here along this great streetscape. Okay, finally, if you wanted to bring out the blues in the sky, all you have to do is just go to blue and increase blue saturation. So I'll try it with both blues here. And that just really helps punch out the warmth of the building and the lights. Okay, again, before and after. Excellent. Okay, let's pick your next picture. Okay, already I like it. A few things we can do. One is we're always looking for the direction of flow. Where does the visual flow of a picture go? Does it go from left to right or right to left? In this picture, the flow, both metaphorically and physically because of this water, is going from left to right. So because of that, we're going to want to give our picture more space in the direction of the flow. So there's two sort of ways you could do that. You could crop in like this, because this information out here was almost irrelevant. And this allows our eye to appreciate the flowing water, and to also enjoy the empty space that's in front of the flow. This is quite normal for compositional principles. I'm not suggesting that that you have to do this. You could even take it one step further and go right along this line here and crop in like so, which simplifies the picture. Now, let me show you the before. Do you see how much empty space is here? It doesn't really support the picture. In fact, it doesn't do anything, but it kind of detracts from the picture, because this is the real star of the show. So we always want to consider, how do we crop for maximum power? I would even suggest that up here is almost completely irrelevant as well. Let's see what happens if we do this. That might be a little bit too tight, so let me back off just a bit. Okay, so what do you think? Does this tell the story a bit better? It certainly could be argued that now it's a little bit too claustrophobic. However, that's largely a subjective view. I think that this is probably going to be the more powerful and more useful crop. However, again, it's very subjective. Okay, let's go to your next shot. And first of all, I love this picture. It's very interesting. I feel that we need to just jazz up the blues a bit. So let's go to the blues. We're going to increase our saturation. Sorry, 1 second here. Get rid of my little film strip. We're going to increase the saturation of just the blues. Okay. Another thing we like to do is just a little bit of highlight reduction up here. So I'm going to go to my light. I'm going to reduce highlights just a bit. Do you see that change there? Let me go to the before and after. And whenever we reduce highlights in the sky, we just bring a little bit more detail into the sky, which is really good. Now, my favorite color combination is blue and yellow. I love it when this happens in the same picture. So the common thing to do, which isn't really that wise, is to take your temperature and warm up the entire picture. But the problem with doing that is that you're actually warming up the blue, and you're really opposing the very thing you're wanting to do, is maintain the blues, but to warm up the rocks. So that's why we're going to go to a selective adjustment. And I'm going to use a brush. And first of all, I'm going to reset everything. If I used these brushes before, which I did, I'm going to choose a size that's appropriate. I'm also going to click on this little triangle in Adobe Lightroom CC. I'm going to have less of a feather than normal. Now, I want to increase the temperature maybe to +30. This might be a bit too yellowish, but we can adjust this later. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint on the rock. Now, it doesn't have to be exact. Don't worry if you paint it outside of the lines. We can correct that after, no problem. Okay, now a very cool thing, if you hover over the blue dot, you can actually see where you've painted. So obviously I need to paint down here. And also, you can increase the size of the brush too, just so you don't waste time. You see how the brush got bigger? And I can just paint this here. Okay, let's take a look at my work here. This red is a mask showing me where I've missed. I missed a spot here and here. Again, I didn't do an exact job along the edge. It's not super critical, to be honest. So what I did was I was able to warm up the rock. However, we have a tint problem. I need to increase the tint more toward the magenta side instead of green. Okay, so I'm adding a bit of magenta. Now I'm going to increase the warmth even more. Now let's look at the before and after. So here's the original shot. And by the way, your composition is really cool. And here is the corrected shot. When I say corrected, I mean adjusted. What do you feel? Do you like it? You could argue that the blues are now a little bit too unrealistic. It's sort of on the edge. It could be realistic or it could be a little bit unrealistic. You can certainly, after the fact, go back and adjust this. Let me show you. So let's go back to color. And all we have to do is just take saturation down. See? Now it's down to nothing. We have black and white. So maybe plus 26 is more of a realistic look for that blue. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I think it's a great shot. Really, really cool. I was happy to work with it. Okay, so let's check out your last picture, the 5th. And I know that you do a lot of drone work, and your drone work is excellent. And I assume this is from your drone, and it's a very crisp and clear picture. I really love it. One thing that I do notice straight away is it just needs a bit of rotation clockwise. So we're going to go to our crop, and we have a straighten tool. Now, straighten tool is not under crop for other programs, but in Lightroom CC it is. And we're just going to do a little bit of a straightening. Now, I usually like to eyeball it, and I base it off a number of factors. One is the horizon. The other is vertical posts. Okay. So I think this is probably a little bit more accurate, and usually you would base it off of any vertical post or any vertical thing that's in as close to the center of the picture as possible. Okay, so next, if you felt that you wanted to get a little bit of that haze gone, it's not necessary. In fact, the haze kind of probably adds to the picture. You could easily do that. Let's do a little special brush work here. So we're going to go to brush, and we're going to reset all of the adjustments from the last time. And now we're only going to brush the hazy area. The side on over here doesn't need any dehaze work at all. It's perfect. Okay, now let's go to dehaze. We're going to increase the dehaze effect. Now, don't worry that the sky is becoming overly blue. We're going to deal with that in a second. Let's just go to a plus 18, and just for consistency, we're going to do the whole sky. And for consistency, we're going to do the whole waterway. Okay? Now, let's hover over the blue dot, and we can see by our red mask that we successfully covered the sky and the water. Don't worry about it bleeding into the land. It's not critical. Okay, so with the dehaze, we can actually adjust. Now, this is to the extreme. Obviously, that's not working. But somewhere around plus 20 is probably quite decent. Okay, so let's look at the before and after. It's a very subtle change, but I think it helps the picture a lot. Okay, now I love greens, especially the greens that you see in water. Let's see what we can do with that. So we're going to go to color, and we're going to pick green. This is called selective color adjustments, by the way, and in Photoshop you can do this. You can do this in many different programs. Now, you can change the hue of green to add a little bit more orange, or to add a little bit more really vibrant green. So I usually like to take my hue up to plus 30 for greens and adjust the saturation accordingly, just a little bit, maybe plus 10. Okay, let's look at the before and the after. Okay, so that's what I do for this picture, and yeah, I think you did a great job, Geoff. Thank you for submitting these images, and I hope that you got a lot out of this portfolio review.